Welcome, Wager Talk Today, Friday, May 26th, the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. Happy advanced Memorial Day to everybody out there. And it is a Prez-free Memorial Day weekend here on Wager Talk TV, so it is safe to jump in the deep end and do some barbecue and grilling. Although I have heard the Prez is heading down to America, I believe, the next week or so. And because of that, I will be filling in for him. I'm Steve Merrill, guest hosting for the Prez. That's my co-host, as always, Teddy Covers. And Teddy, as we head into the weekend, loaded show here on Friday. Who do we have on?
Sure is. Jeff Michaels is going to lead us off. Normally, Ralph Michaels leads us off on Fridays with a chart. His son, Jeff, is going to lead us off with a chart today. Then he's going to talk Rays and Dodgers in MLB for tonight, as well as Celtics and Heat. Game 6 tomorrow night in Miami. Ollie Burns from Team Burns is going to join us next. She's going to talk the Blue Jays and the Twins in MLB action, as well as the Guardians and the Cardinals, a pair in MLB. She's going to break down. Andy Lang is going to close out the show for us. He's got some French Open thoughts. He's got some NASCAR thoughts. He's got some Formula One thoughts as well. BS question touches on college football rivalries today. That should be a fun one for Steve and I to talk about. So it is a loaded Friday edition, pre-Memorial Day. Let's get right in.
Look at all the Memorial Day sports. We're still sneaking football into the conversation, as we often do here on the show. I love it. And by the way, viewers out there, if you have questions, handicapping questions, betting questions in general, please put them in the live chat right now during the show between noon and 1 Eastern. And then, of course, any other 23 hours of the day, put it in the comments on YouTube below on the replay. As we do read all the comments, we reply back, and we use the questions here on the show as well. So give us some good questions as we head into Memorial Day weekend. All right, let's start right off with Jeff Michaels. I love charts. I love math. And, Jeff, I saw a little advanced preview of this MLB chart. I really like what we're talking about today, so I'll throw it over to you. But it's basically a situation we touch upon a lot on the MLB show, by the way, at 2 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday here on the network. And this is teams coming back home after extended road trips. You know, it makes a lot of sense when they've been away from home for a week or two that maybe things don't go well. And on average, that's the case. But you've dug deeper and found some subsets I thought were very interesting. Let's lead right into that MLB chart.
Yeah, funny enough, I'll be talking about one of these games later on that MLB show. But I thought it was interesting, especially with Memorial Day, coming up this weekend. A lot of teams, NBA, we're thinking about teams playing at homes on holidays and whatnot. But, there really is something to be said about some home distractions after these long road trips. I got it. I did have it broken down. We got it between 3, 6, and 9 game road trips. But coming back home, those teams have struggled. You look at that return on investment, which is probably, your most consistent way of being able to see the trends and the consistency. And the consistency is key here. Not many times do you see these trends that go back this far and are so consistent. But teams coming back home off of a road trip are going to be a fade almost universally. But stands out when those teams have a day to rest, a day to enjoy being at home, and a day to enjoy those distractions. Those are going to be a significant fade regardless of the length of that road trip here. Pretty much any parameters you add only make this stronger, and it actually applies 3 times here tonight. We got Oakland, Baltimore, and Arizona tonight, although Arizona is the only one playing with that rest angle added. I'll make sure to post this over on Twitter so you guys can check out that there. But definitely an interesting look off of those teams that are coming home. It's not always a beneficial thing to come back home after those long road trips, at least from a standings aspect. Excuse me.
So the 9+ game road trips, I'm not surprised by at all. Even the 6+ game road trips, I'm not surprised by. But the thing that surprises me about that chart is that even a 3-game road trip, just a single series somewhere else, they come back, they lose. Long term. What do you think why? Why for the short trip?
I was racking my brain on it too. I had to get my dad's thoughts on it as well. And there are a lot of things at home, especially the guys that have kids, that have families. They are people. Sometimes I feel like we forget that. And they come home, they have their bills to pay, they have their normal distractions that I feel like you don't always associate with those professional MLB players. So the normal life, I think, can get in the way coming back home.
Yeah, Jeff, one thing I love about this chart as well is Teddy said you broke it down from 3, 6, 9, and it looks to appear to get stronger on the extended road trips, which is what you want to see. You want to see some breadth and depth to the data, not just random, like 6-game road trips are better than 9-game road trips, things like that. So makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it was counterintuitive to me at first when I looked at it this morning that having the day of rest was worse. But then I agree with you. I think it's almost like you get back home, you have to play the next day. It's like you're on a road trip still because you're in a different city, no rest. Whereas you get that one day to settle, you start doing the chores, you're going to the grocery store, you're taking the kids to school. I think it makes a lot of sense. And as you know, I've always said with trends and angles, it has to make sense. So I love where you're going with this. And by the way, viewers, look at this once again here on the replay. Pause it if you're watching YouTube on the replay, dig into it. And home dogs, 9 or more road trips are the best play against. So you're basically taking the better team against a team that's been away for a couple of weeks and had a day off to regroup. So doesn't pop off in only a few times a year, basically, but it's an angle worth watching. Jeff, you'll be back at 2 o'clock Eastern talking more baseball. But while we have you, let's dig into something tonight in MLB that caught your eye.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Dodgers Rays game here tonight, and I like these Rays. The last time that these two teams actually played, 2020 COVID World Series, neutral field, and Dodgers take the 4-2 win there in the series. But I like Tampa here tonight. Like I said, Noah Syndergaard is on a different level in a bad way here for the Dodgers. He's got an ERA of 10.29 on the road. He's given up 16 earned runs in just 14 innings pitched away from home, and he's got a 1.714 whip on the season on the road. And he's going against Jalen Beeks. And I know he's a short-term pitcher here for Tampa, but they've had success out of those bullpen games. And I mean, Beeks, a 1.64 ERA. He's allowed just 2 earned runs in his 11 innings pitched as a starter. 1.5 ERA, though, in his last 3 starts. He's allowed just 1 earned run and just 3 hits in his last 6 innings pitched. 3.5 K to walk ratio there. And obviously, we've been impressed with what the Rays have done this season. But against NL teams, they've consistently been this good at home. I mean, you look at the numbers they put up this year, but going back 3 seasons, 22-4 on the money line at home against NL teams. They're putting up over 5 runs per game, and they're winning by nearly 2.5 runs. And, the one thing that stood out to me right when I started looking at this was the Dodgers have actually been on an impressive run against lefties. But you look at the lefties that they've started again, or that they've faced off against, they've actually won, I believe it's 9 straight starts against left-handed pitchers. But on the season, the Dodgers are 0-4 against lefties on a team that has a better winning percentage than they do. So not very often, obviously, I know, are they playing these better teams, but they haven't faced, the talent of a pitcher and a team in the same game against these lefties for a while here. So I do like Tampa Bay in this game tonight and looking for a little bit of revenge from that 2020 World Series, even if it was 3 years ago at this point.
So I want to ask you how you approach these bullpen games. A lot of handicappers leave them alone. I tend to look for them. I cashed one last night with San Francisco in a bullpen game, and they ended up throwing a shutout. So it ended up working just fine with their relievers. When you look at a situation like Tampa, who throws a fair few bullpen games over the course of the season, how do you know this is a good spot for the bullpen, this is a bad spot for the bullpen? Because certainly that Dodgers lineup is clicking on all cylinders right now. They've scored 5 or more, 8 times their last 9 ball games. They are absolutely crushing the baseball right now. Bullpen games, talk to me about it.
Yeah, I think that there are teams obviously that are a little more accustomed to them and do them a little bit better, obviously, than when they're planned. I think it's noticeably different, obviously, than trying to fill in a starter that gets scratched or a starter that can't go and grabbing a guy out of the bullpen that's going to come and start a couple innings for you because you have no other option. Tampa Bay and actually Cleveland did it a lot last year. They haven't done it as much this year, obviously, but when you do plan for these games, I think that there is a reason to look for them. They don't do them all the time because they don't overuse the arms of these bullpens. But you got a team like Tampa Bay that has a bullpen that has enough arms to consistently throw multiple innings that are impressive outings. And a lot of what I look at in this situation is gonna be the opposition, and I liked going against Syndergaard here, especially with this short line. And you're right, their offense is clicking, but I think Tampa has more options coming out of that bullpen. And Tampa's offense is nothing to breeze over either. So I think Syndergaard's got a tougher road here than Beeks, which drives the final nail into playing a bullpen game, in my opinion.
It's Jeff Michaels talking some baseball, and now let's talk a little basketball. By the way, that's a great baseball game tonight. Be sure to check him out at 2 p.m. Eastern on First Pitch, along with Drew Martin, Buster Sports, and Adam Trigger. And Jeff, before we get you out there, I want to talk a little bit about Game 6. Celtics season has been extended once again for at least one more game. Teddy and I are going to talk about this a bit afterwards as well, perhaps two more games. How do you think Game 6 plays out in Miami tomorrow night? I hate to say it's a must-win for the Heat up 3-2, but actually, the road teams have been pretty good in this series both ways. How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, you let it in perfectly actually for me. I looked Boston Heat last 3 years. How about the home team is just 7-15 straight up and against the spread. So I'm going with the away team again here too. I think Boston gets another one. I think they force it out to a game 7. But I mean, you look at Boston, all 5 starters yesterday were positive in the plus minus differential, and they had 4 of their starters put up 20 plus points. And a lot of what I've talked about, what other people have talked about with this Miami team is the guys that are stepping up, and Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, guys like that are coming off the bench or starting at this point, and really making an impact. But a lot of what I heard through this whole run is how long can it go? How long can it last? How long can these guys hold out and continue to do what they've been doing? And I really think that the injuries may be starting to catch up to Miami. Boston, I talked about it actually on the NBA show the other day, but I think Bam Adebayo is a huge piece to this Miami team. Granted, he's not their leading scorer, but stopping him in the last 2 games has really made this Miami team almost one-sided and one-dimensional. A lot of guard scoring. You got Butler, you got Vincent if he comes back for this next game. And you're relying on Caleb Martin, who is basically your third leading scorer coming off the bench there. So a lot of obstacles that Miami's had to bounce over. And now I think that there's questions about that longevity there. Even at home, they're not a team that has been consistent. Miami's only shot 10 free throws in that last game. And I mean, Haywood Highsmith, how about, if you're not a Miami fan, that might not be a name that rings a bell there. He averaged 18 minutes per game this entire season, putting up just 4.4 points per game. Yesterday, he put up 36 minutes, attempted 10 field goal attempts, and he was the third leading scorer on the team. So that alone, I think, kind of shows you how thin Miami has been stretched with these injuries. That doesn't take away with how impressive it's been. But I think the away team gets another one here. And, as much as this is a must win for Miami, it's obviously a must win for Boston too. And I think Missoula's got a lot of pressure on his shoulder here. So I think Tatum and Brown, that duo there, can definitely pull out one more with this small line here heading on the road to Miami.
So here's the question. If you want to take Boston Game 6 and lay a price with them, wouldn't you take Boston for the series right now at the plus price? If Miami loses Game 6 at home, are they going to go up to Boston and win Game 7 after losing the last 3? Is that a way you would consider betting it, or not so much?
I was almost on Miami yesterday. I was on Miami yesterday, but I was more confidently on Miami's team total yesterday because I was looking for that bounce back spot after being held under 100 points. So, with the way that the road team has played between these two teams, I can't say that I'm going to be on Miami specifically for a game 7, but I wouldn't be all over Boston on a game 7, especially with the history of the way the road teams have played between these two teams. It's been day and night. So, I do think that Boston gets it done here. If the game's close, I'd probably be looking Boston for game 7. If Boston blows out Miami here tonight, I very well may be looking for a Miami bounce back spot. So I wouldn't be totally reliant on game 6, or I would be more reliant on game 6 as to how I bet game 7 as opposed to, how the series is playing out.
Yeah, Jeff, it's exactly what I was thinking as well. Teddy, you're right, because as you know, game 7 home teams, I think on the long term are 78% straight up. So obviously Boston's been about an 8 to 10 point favorite in every home game so far. They'd be probably 8.5 again, at a 75% chance to win straight up like they were last night. Yet, as you said, Jeff, the big conundrum there is that was 7-15 for the road team, 7-15 for the home team. So it's like this one series home court hasn't, and Boston's been like that in other series. Atlanta, Philly, they've played well on the road and blown some home games. So a very interesting way we can approach this. And by the way, we'll be talking more NBA. I'll be on the NBA show at 4:15 Eastern today on Friday, so be sure to check back 4:15 Eastern for NBA talk. 2 o'clock Eastern, MLB talk with Jeff Michaels and company. And Jeff, what else you got going on at WagerTalk.com?
Yeah, my top play today is the team total. We've been on a hot totals run, 7-2 in the last 9, hit 4 out of the last 5 team totals. So make sure you guys go check that out over on Wager Talk.
Love it. Team totals, just another way to approach baseball and make some money at wagertalk.com. Jeff Michaels, son of Ralph Michaels. There is a relation there, and they've got some great stats. Great to see Jeff here on Friday. And Teddy, before we bring on Team Burns, Alley Burns, let's talk a little bit more about Game 6 here in the NBA tonight. As I mentioned, NBA tip-off will be on at 4:15 Eastern, so we'll be a deep dive into this show, into this game later on the network here. But on this show, I still want to talk about it a bit. I saw a little birdie told me that you recommended on the NBA show yesterday Celtics to win the series. You defied the 150-0 trend. But, man, if there's ever a time it's going to happen, obviously, it's when arguably the best team in the NBA, last year's finals favorite, was playing an 8 seed that barely made the postseason. So yesterday, Teddy, I put on Twitter that it was plus 240. I did the math for winning all 3 games. Now the true odds, I've got it at 57% tomorrow night, about 74%, 75% on Monday based on the money lines. That comes out to 42%. About plus 140, as you said, is Mike, minus 150, plus 130. So the odds makers pretty much have it priced right. What are your thoughts on this now? What have we learned?
So 0 and 150, right? That's what we keep hearing. Teams down 0-3 in a series coming back. It doesn't happen. It's never happened. But I really think, and I talked about this on the NBA tip-off show yesterday, that the 150-0 or 151-0 is misleading, and misleading as it gets. Because the vast majority of the teams down 0-3 in an NBA playoff series are the lower seed, not the higher seed, the team that was clearly weaker, the team that hasn't been there before. And those are the teams that get swept, or maybe they win a game or two and they go home. When you're talking about the number 2 seed or higher down 0-3 against a 3 seed or lower, that's only 0-9, not 0-150. And that's against a 3. When you make that 3 seed a 5 seed or lower, it's 0-3. And one of the 3 came back in the 50s with the Rochesters, whoever the heck they were. The Rochester Royals in the 50s. The Knicks came back against them and won a series. So we're talking about 0-2 now, not 0-50, 0-2. Real difference in how you think about it. 0-50 versus 0-2. Let's not forget the Celtics are 13-7 on the road since the start of the 2022 postseason. Better on the highway than they've been on at home by far. Game 6 is going to be fun. I don't know which way I'm going yet, but the 0-150, let's tap the brakes on that. It's 0-2. Steve?
Yeah, that's crazy, Teddy. I mean, I had not dug deep enough to know it was that small of a. I would have guessed 10, 15, 20 games maybe, but like literally 2 or 3 is insane. And here's what I want to ask
well,
you
there's 3.
Is
there was 3, but one was
right?
from
But
the
one
50s.
was like the 50. Yeah, I mean, so the modern era, you're really talking like 2, like you said, weren't too many 3-point shots in the 50s, obviously, like the Celtics. Now, that's something we did point out. We'll talk more about on the NBA tip-off shows. Boston's hitting some threes now. They're shooting better. Can that go for 4 straight games? It's a different era now in the NBA, even than just 10 or 20 years ago. But real quick, I want to touch on a concept I had last night here. If you like the Celtics to come back and win the series, instead of playing them at plus 130, 135, got to take a look at them at 3-1 on the championship price. And the reason I say that is because the Red Sox were the first team back in '04 to ever do it in baseball, 0-3 to the Yankees, as you remember. They carried that momentum into the World Series. They swept the Cardinals 4-0. You just get a feeling like Boston's got that momentum now, and if they're able to carry it for 2 more games, you got to have a feeling it's probably going to carry into the finals as well. What would be your thoughts? And I mean, Boston would probably be favored over Denver, obviously, right?
I agree wholeheartedly. If the Celtics win 4 games in a row to beat Miami, they're the momentum team. They'll be the favorites. And if you want to bet Boston now to win this series, makes a whole lot of sense to put at least some portion of that wager for Boston to win it all. You're getting a nice price to do so, or as good a price as you're going to find for Boston to do so.
Yeah, and by the way, just looking at on average right now, Denver's 1-2. They're almost minus 200. Boston's 3-1. Miami's as high as 4.5, 5-1. So the Heat only have to win one of the next 2 to make the finals, but they're 5-1. Boston's only 3-1, which is also something you hardly ever see. Just shows how crazy this series has been so far. All right, more talk on the NBA at 4:15 Eastern. I will be on today, breaking this game down with some others as well. And let's get into some baseball talk once again. We'll bring on Allie Burns, part of Team Burns with Ben Burns over at WagerTalk.com. Allie, welcome to the show. It's the first time I've gotten to work with you, so looking forward to talking some baseball with you. And let's see, what do you want to dive into first? Give us a game you want to talk about here. Your choice.
Action if that suits you just fine. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. Let's talk
No
a little
complaints.
Blue Jays.
Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, Ben has pretty much broken this down. Now, keep in mind, Ben is a Canadian and he loves him some Toronto Blue Jays. It's not easy to be a Blue Jays fan right now, right? They're off of back-to-back losses. They've dropped 7 of their last 8, I believe it is. But they need a win, right? That's just the fact of the matter here. And we've got Gosman on the mound. We think this is a great situation for them to get one. You know, he's got an outstanding ERA, 1.71. He's averaged 7 innings per start in his last 3 games. And last time he was on the road, he threw 6 shutout innings, striking out 9 and without walking a batter. So we're going to roll with the Blue Jays minus the 142. They're up against Varland, who has been less than stellar, 4.18 ERA for the season. The Twins are coming off a 7-1 win to the Giants, but they had dropped the 3 before that. They had a day off. They're at home. So, yeah, we're rolling with it. The Blue Jays minus the 142 when they're playing the Twins today.
Now, the Blue Jay games have been remarkable of late. Tampa covered as chalk, or won as chalk, each of the last 2. But prior to that, each of the last 8 games that Toronto had played, the underdog won. They've been pretty good for cashing underdog tickets here. You're talking about an ice-cold team coming off a divisional smackdown on the road, and now you want to lay a price with them. Explain.
Well, you would have to ask Ben about that. I thought I did just explain. No, I'm just kidding. It's just one of those situations. Wasn't that what I just did, Teddy? No, it's just one of those situations where, strength of schedule played into this one. Like you said, the Rays are a hot team. And granted, that 20-1 win that the Blue Jays had was quite an anomaly. So we can't really mark that up for, the Blue Jays rock or anything. But their strength of schedule differs. The Giants are not the hottest team in the world. That's who the Twins have been after. They lost 2 of those games out of 3. So it's just the way that we're rolling with this one. We're sticking with a sharper pitcher who really needs a win for his team in this spot.
Yeah, one thing I like to look at too is offensive momentum. And Teddy, you mentioned that the dog was winning. That's because Toronto was basically losing every game as a favorite. So I wouldn't even take that deep. It was more Toronto just losing outright. But they started to hit the ball. And I used, don't forget about the free plays, wagertalk.com. We all put up free plays every day. Had a free play the other night on the over in that Tampa-Toronto game when it was 20-1. So I felt pretty good about that. Mad that I didn't make it a best bet. But they had 27 hits in that game, and they'd had 33 hits in the 3 games before, even though they'd lost all 3. So does look like there's some momentum offensively coming with Toronto here, and we'll see if they can carry that into the weekend here at Minnesota. All right, Allie, let's talk a little interleague action here. Let's go with the St. Louis Cardinals against Ralph and Jeff Michaels, Cleveland Guardians / Indians. St. Louis at Cleveland. What are you doing with this one tonight?
we're taking the Guardians, so thank goodness that we're on the right side of that as far as fandom goes on the show. This game kind of falls roughly into a pick'em range, but we think that the Guardians have a clear advantage, especially pitching advantage. Not to mention that the Guardians had a day off yesterday, whereas the Cardinals did play. I believe they beat the Reds 2-1 in Cincinnati. But the Cardinals have not actually had a day off since May the 11th. So they've been rolling for a long time. And now we've got Bieber on the mound. He's been really solid all season long. Last time out, he held the Mets to 2 runs over 8 complete innings. And he's really stingy at home at Progressive Field. In his 3 home starts, he's got a 2.41 ERA. So that's the way we're going to roll with that. Also, we really like Cleveland's bullpen here. The 2.28 ERA for the bullpen we think is going to be solid with us as well. Whereas on the other side, we've got Liberatore, second start of the season. He's got a really poor career average, 5.53 ERA. We think this price could be higher, but we're going to roll with the Guardians in this one to improve their 19-10 record over the past few seasons after coming off a shutout loss. So that's our play.
You're worried all about Bieber coming off his highest pitch count of the season. Is that one of those things that stands out, or the fact that the Guardians have that elite pen makes you not worry about it quite as much?
It's more the bullpen. That's why we even brought it up, was because of that. We've got an elite bullpen here, and Bieber's no joke. So even if he doesn't go 5 or 6, it's not like he's not going to have solid innings through whatever he does pitch. So we're feeling good on this one. We're feeling confident.
Allie Burns, part of Team Burns with Ben Burns at WagerTalk.com. And, we didn't talk NBA, but what has been on like a 21-4 NBA run? It's insane, Allie. What else going on at WagerTalk?
Yes, 21-4 NBA run. I believe he is still the #1 NBA handicapper over at WagerTalk since he came on. And he's got, I don't have it written down, but he's got some amazing record also from the month of April. There's always so many good promos to give out for him. It's hard to keep them all in my head when it's time to promote. But head over to WagerTalk.com, find Ben Burns, check out those premium plays, crushing the NBA. And don't forget to check out the Ben Burns Report on every Monday through Friday. That's 2 free picks from Ben that we give out every day.
Sure, I love the free picks, and numerous free picks every day from all the cappers at WagerTalk.com, including Ben Burns, Allie Burns, part of Team Burns. Allie, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Memorial Day. Stay safe. Enjoy the baseball, the race, and everything else we got going on. And Teddy, it is a loaded Memorial Day weekend. So before we get to Andy Lang, the prop master, who's going to talk about some of those other off sports, let's talk about a definite off sport right now, and that's college football. But it's never too early to talk about college football. And once again, if you have questions, please leave them in the live comments right now. I'm going to scour through them after the show and find some. And then also, more importantly, the best option is to leave them on YouTube in the comments post-show, and we reply back. And if we don't answer them on the air, we'll still reply back and try to give you some answers and some tips as well. So once again, gambling questions, handicapping questions, anything you want to ask here, I'll be guest hosting all of next week with Teddy. So looking forward to answering some questions on a daily basis here. But let's dig into one that we got, and Prez passed this one along. I appreciate his help because I hadn't been on this week, but it's from Nick Lalek. I think I pronounced that right. Nick is asking for college football handicapping, do motivational factors like regional rivalries matter as much as they used to? Now with the recruiting, the NIL deals, transfer rules have changed. Nick says his team 20 years ago was almost all local kids, but now they pull across from all around the country. Do the rivalries still mean the same from a handicapping standpoint, even though the players didn't necessarily grow up with a personal connection to them? Teddy, it's an interesting take, and I'll give my view after I get yours. But I'd say in general, I probably don't use like rivalry games as much as I did maybe in the 90s when you and I started. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, my answer is kind of yes and kind of no. I don't have a great answer for you on this one. It's an interesting question, and you're absolutely right. In a lot of ways, the recruiting in college football has changed so much that a rivalry from 20 years ago is non-existent today, or certainly not meaningful today. It might be meaningful for the fans, but I don't care if a rivalry is meaningful for the fans. I want the rivalry to be meaningful for the players. And you don't necessarily find as much of that. Now, you'll still find it in many circumstances. You're in cities, you're in states, but some of the lesser known rivalries, and there's a ton of them in college football, but the ones that don't necessarily jump off the page, they might not be as significant rivalry-wise or motivation-wise as they were 10 and 20 years ago. That said, most of my handicap is this year's Team A versus this year's Team B, and not as worried about how these teams played 5 and 10 and 20 years ago. So, yeah, it's something to consider, but there are many, many factors to consider. There are rivalry games that do stand out, and rivalry games that are under the radar that still exist. But in general, less so now than it was 10 and 20 years ago. Steve? I don't even know if that's a good answer or not, but that's how I answer the question.
I like where you're going. It gave me some time to stew on it a little bit more as well. And I was just thinking back to when you and I started in the 90s. My first year as a full-time professional handicapper was 1996. I remember back then, like rival dogs in November, we'd always look to play terrible Vanderbilt teams against Tennessee, and it always seemed to work. And I don't really consider that anymore. Another angle too, back in the 90s when I started, was homecoming. Home dogs on homecoming had nice winning percentages in the early 90s. I mean, Teddy, I don't even know when homecoming games are anymore. I'm sure you probably don't either. And one thing that has changed with modern technology is that every game is televised. There aren't as many big games anymore because, all of Alabama's games are pretty big now. So their Auburn game probably isn't quite as important. Washington State, not quite as important. But with that said, it's still a factor. But like you said, the bottom line with that back in the 90s was just motivation and maybe overlooked by the favorite, motivation for the underdog, a team that didn't have anything to play for. Now the teams have to win 6 games to make a bowl game. That's something we look at a little bit more. Last home games in college basketball, not as meaningful as when we started in the 90s because guys only play 1 or 2 years. It's not senior night anymore. Same thing with last home game in college football. It's not senior night, or these guys have played there for 1 season, or they're a grad transfer. So, yes, things change, but the bottom line is it's all about trying to find motivation. And like you said, we look for that on a weekly basis. We just might not find as much motivation from those type of angles anymore.
And it's definitely worth noting, all right? There are games that are important to the team, and there might be games that are important to the fans, all right?
The alumni.
Homecoming tends to be a game that's important to the fans, not the team quite so much. So be aware of the difference. When the team is motivated to face a particular foe, it's a very different story than the fans are all excited. Home field edge across sports has declined fairly precipitously over the last 30 years in sports betting.
Yeah, excellent point. It's almost non-existent, like we've talked about in the NFL now in general. And once again, it's just because everything travels equalized, everything's televised. People don't go to the games as much. They can watch them online on the go. So I think it's an excellent point. So thank you, Nick. Great question. And once again, put them in the live chat right now. If you're watching this afterwards, anytime this week, and leave them in the comments below here on YouTube. And we will get your questions each and every day here on Wager Talk Today, live, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday on Wager Talk TV. And let's finish out our pre-Memorial Day weekend show with the prop master, Andy Lang. We've got French Open, NASCAR, Formula One. Yes, Andy, we're getting 3 sports we haven't talked on yet. I love it. Let's dig right into it. Hey, look, man, I'm not going to even pretend to know anything about the French Open. Prez was talking about this the last couple of weeks. It's the only reason I knew it was going on. But your shirt looks like clay. I believe they still play on clay. Very appropriate. Give us some info.
Well, I picked this color because Prez always gives me grief for wearing red, so I decided to pull out the salmon orange Friday that like he normally does in memory of him. So yeah, let's talk French Open. Listen, French Open are a big part of our bankrolls. We're number 1 since we joined Wager Talk in tennis. Number 1 last 365 days. Number 1 this year, and the majors, especially this one, have been really, really good to us. So obviously it is on clay, and you do have to know some of these players that play really good on clay and the ones that don't. It's just if you're good on hard courts, it doesn't mean that you're great on clay. It has long rallies. The ball can bounce in very, very different directions. It's a little bit slower at times, and you have to have very, very quick movement. You have to be good on the surface. Like your feet can't just be good on grass and not good on clay. So it does take a very particular person or player to really succeed. I will tell you that for us, we don't really do outrights. There's just not a lot of value in there. You're just better off betting them on game to game. Just a couple of thoughts on the men's side. So, the heavy favorite is Alcaraz. It's not worth the price. He has maybe the hardest draw He's the most talented, but it's just a really, really tough draw. He's going to be up against a lot of really good players. Djokovic has not been great. He's got a little bit of injuries. He's got a tough draw. You've got Rudd, who we like, last year's runner-up. He's got a really good draw, but he's not in good form, so we're not really looking to play him. And, Holger Rune is plus 700. He made a nice run last year as an underdog. He's well-rounded, really good form, and he does have the easier side of the draw. But again, we're not going to take outrights on him. It's just going to be better to bet on him each match. On the women's side, this one is really up for grabs. So you got Swiatek, huge favorite, but it's minus 150. She's had injuries. She struggled this year. No chance. I'm betting on her at minus 150. Sabalenka, not really suited to clay, but she's been the best player this one. So there's just not a lot of value in the outrights, at least from our perspective. What we like doing is hitting the French Open hard and heavy. You're going to get a lot of plays on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if we start off with a bang like we do, we'll probably taper off our plays. So a free play for that. Let's do Zapata versus Schwartzman. This is kind of one of my favorite angles in sports, is when you have individual sports players and you have somebody that's got some real problems off the field or off the court, which Schwartzman does have. We're going to fade him. Zapata's good on clay. He's solid from the baseline. Schwartzman, tons of unforced errors. We did mention he's got some real problems on the court and off the court. Does not seem confident. Does not seem focused. And Zapata beat him on clay this year in straight sets head-to-head. So that's a 1% play. That's a client play that's already up. That's a 1%. We also have a 2% and a 3% play that is up. So if you want to grab the French Open pack, these plays start early Monday morning, and just cannot wait to rake in these tennis plays.
So Zapata beat Schwartzman in straight sets earlier this year, and there are clearly some off-court distractions for the dog. Why is this line as short as it is? Does it surprise you? Is it way off of where you thought it would be?
Well, it actually started off at minus 110, so there has been movement to the minus 130. I would still play this at minus 130. And to answer your question, yes, this was surprising. This is a great line to grab this. You don't normally see a line that's kind of this off, but in the first round of the French Open, there's so many matches. Sometimes these fall through the cracks. I would play this up to minus 140. I love this play.
Andy Lang, WagerTalk.com, the prop master, talking a little tennis French Open. And, you talked about clay. I do remember that. We got grass, I believe, at Wimbledon still. And it's like the surfaces in NASCAR, right? So the French Open is like the dirt track at Bristol for NASCAR. But this week, NASCAR is on a normal track. Who are you looking at this week in NASCAR, Andy? Give us a little preview.
Well, it's probably the greatest weekend in racing. You've got NASCAR and Monaco, and I got to give out some racing plays. Yeah, let's take Kevin Harvick. This is on the Charlotte track, and Steve, you know as well as I do that Kevin Harvick just absolutely loves racing at Charlotte. This is an insane 600-mile race. There's no reason for NASCAR to run a 600-mile race, for the record. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's insanity. But you can find these guys that race really good here. Kevin Harvick, average finish the last 4 races here is 7th. So we're going to lock him in at the top 10 at minus 125. He's finished 5th, 9th, and 11th at the 3 other cookie cutter tracks this year: California, Las Vegas, and Kansas. Those are tracks that are very similar to Charlotte. And Harvick's worst finishes this year are on short tracks or the restrictor plate tracks. He does well. His team is good, and I really like where he's at mentally this year, Steve. I mean, this is his last year as a full-time driver. That's what he said, but he's just racing with a lot of confidence. He seems pretty content and happy, and the results are there. So you're getting a fantastic price here on Kevin Harvick, who loves racing at Charlotte, on the top 10.
Well, we've talked some NASCAR. We talked some French Open. Let's talk some Formula One in Monaco. Didn't the Indy 500 used to be this weekend? Now we got Monaco stuff. What are we going to do in Monaco?
All right. So, yeah, Monaco is I just love Monaco. It's just so beautiful, and it's so picturesque, and we're going to just keep cashing on this play, this one that's hit like every week. It's Mercedes double top 10. And what you end up with is this play that's hit 24 out of 27 races. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, they've hit 24 out of 27 races. Now they just got done with practice, and George Russell wasn't great. But last year at Monaco, one of the Mercedes was not great in practice. They both qualified in the top 10, and they both finished inside the top 10. Passing is almost impossible at this track. So you hope that they qualify good, but Mercedes brought upgrades to their cars this weekend. Lewis Hamilton looked really fast. Russell was terrible in the first practice, but he looked much better in practice too. They will get their act together. They'll get the cars dialed in. And Steve, Teddy, you guys know, you find a play that keeps hitting. You just keep riding it every single week. So I'm going to keep playing this Mercedes top 10 play. The juice is around minus 200. So if you want to use this as a very small play, like if you want to put 1% or even 2% on it, you can. Or if you want to use it as a parlay piece, which is kind of what I prefer doing with something else that you really, really like, then you can go ahead and do that. But for every Formula One race for the rest of the season, it's going to be a Mercedes double top 10 finish for me.
Andy Lang, the prop master, and you get a triple play of racing on Sunday, Andy. It is by far your favorite day of the year for auto racing. I mean, we get, I believe, F1 at 9 a.m., Indy around 12:45 Eastern, and then Charlotte race around probably, 6 Eastern or so on triple head. You might want to check out Andy Lang if you want to make some money.
Yeah, Teddy, the Indy 500 is this Sunday. I just don't bet on it. It's kind of it's cool to be there and to watch, but over the years it's just become a fairly tough track to bet on, and I just find the NASCAR and Formula One are just a little bit more profitable than the Indy 500. So yes, it is. It's 20 minutes that way from my house, so I'll be listening to them, but I won't be betting on the Indy 500.
That's right. I forgot you can basically hear it in your backyard. You're an Indianapolis guy.
Oh, yeah.
I completely forgot that. So, yeah, he knows it as well as anyone and says there's no value. And sometimes the best value is passing when there's no value. So, once again, Andy Lang, F1 and NASCAR, along with props in baseball, basketball, hockey, everything else. Tennis, French Open. Check out Andy Lang. Andy, what else you got going on at Wager Talk?
Well, every Friday we use the promo code Andy3. It gets you Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for $39. We did this last week, brought in 4.8 units, so ecstatic. The weekends have been really good for us. We're already off to a good start. We cashed a 3% play on Formula One practice this morning. So you can use a promo code Andy3 to get 3 days for $39. But really, you want to get the French Open pack. Like I said, we hit it hard and heavy for the first few rounds. So you can go to the profile page, get the French Open pack. There's 3 plays that are already up. Make sure you're checking your updates. Make sure you have your text notifications on, because some of these plays, because they're over there, the time difference is a little weird. So sometimes our plays come out at odd hours. But lock in the French Open play. I believe it's only $49. Number 1 in tennis since we started. Number 1 last 365 days. Number 1 this year. So really, really good source to help build the bankroll.
Andy3, that's the promo code, 3-day pass for $39. And by the way, it's not trying to get rich in 3 days. It's to make a commitment to a long-term investment and find out how it works and get those instant updates. When he has a qualifying play in Formula One, you get an instant text message and email as you can get that play in. It's a great way to try it any capper you'd like, these short subscriptions. And then, Teddy, you've got a big play going tonight as well at Wager Talk. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I have a 5% big ticket going tonight. There's a bunch of guys with 5%. Of course, my 5%, I think it's 56 and 33 since May 2021. So 64% over the last 2 years, 6 and 3 since the Super Bowl, 67%. But I'm not the only one. Brian Leonard with a 5% report today. Andrew McGinnis with a 5% report today. We've got Jazz Ray with a 5% and Adam Trigger as well. So all 5 of us with big top-rated selections over at WagerTalk.com. Check them out this weekend. And that's going to wrap it for the week here at Wager Talk. We'll be doing it again on Monday, Memorial Day. We'll be here 9 a.m. Pacific, noon for you back east. Between now and then, you guys know what to do. Enjoy the games and best of luck with all your wagers.
Welcome to the Wager Talk Summer Celebration. How many consider Memorial Day weekend the start of the summer and Labor Day the last hurrah? Summertime means vacations, crazy schedules, and entirely different routines. That's why it's the perfect time to lock in an all-access pass with daily email and or text updates to follow along with your favorite handicapper selections. This offer gives you 98 days of access from Memorial Day through Labor Day. You can start today and get a few extra days for free. A 30-day all-access pass is regularly priced at $299, and a 90-day all-access pass at $849. But with our summer celebration special, you can lock in the entire summer for under $6 per day or just over $40 per week. That's right, our summer celebration is only $579. But wait, there's more. Can't choose just one? Buy 2 summer specials at $579 and we'll give you $100 in bonus wager bucks. Just email support@wagertalk.com after your purchase and ask them to credit your account. This valid is offered through midnight on Wednesday, May 31st. From all of us at WagerTalk, have a safe and enjoyable summer.